I was fired after 17 years, but what I discovered changed everything about my life. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The dim office light bulb flickered over my head, casting eerie shadows against the gray walls. The air was thick with tension. I felt it in my bones. My heart raced, a drum echoing in my chest. The atmosphere crackled like the static before a storm. My boss's face was pale, eyes darting nervously between me and the door. "We have to let you go," he said, each word a dagger. My hands trembled, fingers brushing the cold metal of my desk. How could this happen? 17 years of my life, gone in a moment. The silence that followed was deafening. It swallowed my cries, my fears, my hopes. I looked around the room. My co-workers' faces were masks of shock, some whispering among themselves. I saw pity in their eyes, regret mixed with disbelief. Just yesterday I led a team meeting, our laughter filling the space, dreams flowing like an endless river. And now? Now I stood alone, stripped of my place, my purpose. My mind raced. How would I tell my wife? What would I say to my kids? As I stepped into the bustling city streets, the world moved on. Cars honked, people rushed by, oblivious. A wave of nausea slammed into me. I was no longer part of that world. The concrete felt colder under my feet, it echoed my despair. What was I now? I searched the sky, hoping for answers, but the clouds just shifted, mocking my plight. Later that night, I lay awake, drowning in thoughts. Memories flashed me: daughter's laughter, the smell of my wife's perfume. I longed to reach out, to hold on to something solid. But something inside me flickered. What if this setback was a hidden opportunity? The idea sparked like a match in the dark. I needed to dig deeper. Suddenly, I remembered that antique shop down the street, the one I always walked past and never entered. Rumor had it, the owner was a bit odd, whispering secrets about lost treasures and cursed objects. My heart raced, curiosity pulling me towards the mystery. What if I could discover something to change my life forever? But as I drifted into sleep, my mind twisted with shadows. What awaited me there? What if the whispers I had heard weren't just tales, but warnings? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The next morning, dawn's light seeped through the curtains, casting an unsteady glow in the room. I squinted at the clock, the numbers blurred together, reminding me that I had overslept. Just another weird dream, I told myself, but the feeling of despair nestled like a stone in my stomach. After all, I had failed to plan for this. The world remained the same: outside, cars racing, horns blaring, people bustling to their destinations, while I remained adrift, a shipwreck survivor clutching onto fragments of what once was. A warmth spread through me as I recalled my resolve to visit the antique shop. Perhaps today would be the day I unearthed whatever hidden treasure awaited me within those walls. The journey to the shop felt eternal, each step an echo of my uncertainty. When I finally approached the weathered door, its peeling paint told stories of countless passers-by who had pondered life's questions while wandering through dusty aisles. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob, nerves inviting doubt to weave through my focus. But somehow, the thought of discovering something remarkable tugged at me, a guiding compass through murky waters. The owner, a wiry gentleman with eyes that shimmered like shards of glass, looked up from behind an old oak counter. "Ah, the wandering soul finally arrives," he said cryptically, as if he'd been expecting me all along. My heart fluttered. "You're here for something," he continued, "but who knows what it is? he gestured at the myriad trinkets surrounding us, the coiling shadows cast from hanging chandeliers, the worn books with cracked spines, each one whispering stories of lives long past. I couldn't help but feel that my fate intertwined with these objects, an intertwining thread waiting to be pulled. Just browsing, I managed to say, a nervous smile creeping across my lips. As I turned, my fingers grazed a silver locket, tarnished with age. I held it up, intrigued. "Ah, a choice with history," he murmured, his brows knitting together. This locket belonged to a woman who had lost everything but found her strength through the memories it held. A chill raced down my spine. Was he speaking to me, or to his wares? Did I seek strength or merely distraction? I was about to set the locket back down when the bell above the door tinkled again. In walked a woman, visibly flustered, with tousled hair and a pile of papers clutched against her chest. She glanced around, panic etched in her features. I am looking for a picture frame," she stammered, "something that speaks to love." The owner nodded, which somehow calmed her. I took a hesitant step closer. "Why love?" I asked, curious to peel back the layers of her evident anxiety. She turned, surprise flickering in her eyes. "My partner, he's been sick, and I want to remind him of happy times." The raw vulnerability in her voice cracked open a well of empathy in me. I ached for her story, for the profound struggles both of us carried, yet could only whisper softly to the world. In that small space, I found an unexpected connection. "Do you remember a happy memory?" I asked her, my heart reaching out. She smiled hesitantly. "Our first dance at that silly little diner." He wore a ridiculous hat. Laughter bubbled up, cutting through her turmoil, and for that moment, we were both suspended in fragile hope. As she recounted the whimsical memory, I felt that familiar urge to connect. The anxiety of facing my own reality peeled back, revealing compassion I hadn't realized was hidden within me. A spark formed there amid uncertainty, igniting a flicker of awareness that we were all carrying burdens together. But just then, the owner, standing silently in the shadows, cleared his throat. "Hope has a way of slipping through your fingers, doesn't it?" His voice was somber, echoing the weight of my thoughts. An unsettling silence filled the room. My mind raced as I glanced back at the locket. "Do you believe memories can be enough to anchor us?" I asked, needing to hear him confirm my thoughts, my fears. "Sometimes it's not the memory that anchors us, but the act of sharing it. Of letting someone else hold that weight with you," he whispered, his eyes glistening with unspoken stories. I felt the implications weave around me, touching places I had kept hidden from myself. As the woman smiled through her tears, I looked down, trembling fingers clutching the locket and its representation of shared facets of life, burdens, memories, reinvention. But just as I opened my mouth to ask the shopkeeper about the price, the bell chimed once more, and I stopped mid-sentence. A police officer stepped in, scanning the room. "Has anyone here seen a man in a green jacket?" His voice, filled with urgency, pulled at my heartstrings. The name that surfaced in my mind sent shockwaves through my body. My stomach sank at the thought, a question that had no easy answer and could unravel the fragile hope woven through this day so far. What if I wasn't the only one facing a storm? Would I actually be a beacon of strength for both this woman and the officer, or would whatever was happening outside plunge us further into chaos? An invisible thread of uncertainty pulled taut as the walls of the antique shop seemed to close in, and as I stood frozen, a profound truth echoed within me: despair could only be overcome through shared experiences, but I had no idea how the outside world was about to crash into this fragile sanctuary. The air shifted, heavy with the weight of the police officer's presence, and a wave of anxiety settled in my chest. The woman beside me instinctively clutched her papers tighter, her eyes widening in fear. I felt my own heart begin to race, urgency clawing at my throat. The fragile threads of hope we had woven together seemed perilously close to unraveling. "Has anyone here seen a man in a green jacket?" the officer repeated, scanning the finely dusted shelves. I swallowed hard, my mind racing back to the echoes of memories tied to that coat, memories that I tried to conceal under layers of grief. "Can you describe him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, unsure whether I wanted the answer. The officer paused, the wrinkle of concern deepening on his forehead. "He's of average height, slightly scruffy, was last seen around this area several hours ago. I'm worried he might be in trouble. As I exchanged glances with the woman, I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. She, too, felt the urgency of connection, of pulling through for someone who might be lost. Maybe he's just lost. People can get lost sometimes, I murmured, hoping my words held weight, as they clanged loudly in my own mind. Before the officer could respond, the old shopkeeper stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from quiet observer to a man clearly burdened by recognition. A green jacket? Yes, I think I saw someone fitting that description wander in here earlier this morning. A knot tightened in my gut, hope mingled with dread. What do you mean saw him? I asked, my voice trembling slightly as curiosity beckoned me closer. He was looking for something, pacing around, and muttering to himself, the shopkeeper recalled, his expression growing solemn. But then he left with something. I assumed he was heading further down the street. The mention of going further down the street sent ripples of panic through me. What if he's in trouble? I blurted, my mind spiraling into dark thoughts. I barely managed to get through the days without any further losses, the haunting worry of more grief spiraling into my life weighing heavily. The officer nodded, slipping into a professional exterior as he acknowledged my concern. Can you think of anything else? Anything, he said. The shopkeeper's brow furrowed as he searched the depths of his memory. Nothing specific, just frustration. But sometimes frustration leads to desperation. A silence settled over us, the tension palpable. I found myself reaching for the locket once more, my fingers brushing over its cold surface. It felt like a tangible barrier against whatever demons were creeping closer in the shadows, an anchor in a sea of uncertainty where I feared to drift. I think we should help him, I murmured, driven by a sense of purpose that ignited sharp clarity in my heart. The woman beside me nodded, her grip tightening around her papers. He might have loved ones who care, she added, a spark of determination brightening her expression. The officer sighed, aware of the duty that lay before him. It's best if I go alone, but if you remember anything, come find me. Just as he began to turn, the door behind him creaked open, a gust of wind swirling through the shop, sending a gentle shiver through us all. In stepped another figure, a young man with tousled hair and a wild look in his eyes that immediately caught my attention. He fit the officer's description, but a hint of wildness told me he was disoriented, searching for something more than just his way. Excuse me. I called out, stepping forward before I could second-guess myself. Are you looking for someone? The young man seemed to freeze, uncertain. I was hoping to find my brother. He disappeared last night. After his voice trailed off as desperation seeped into his words, and my heart thundered at the implications. After what? The officer pressed, urgency lining his voice, while my own breath hitched at hearing the words spoken aloud. After the fight, the young man mumbled, shame coloring his tone. After I lost everything. He was trying to help me out of a bad situation, but his words hung in the air, heavy like the memories we had all tried so hard to escape. The realization washed over me like a wave of cold water. All of our burdens intertwined, echoed in the lives we were grasping at. This young man, not unlike the rest of us, was lost and holding on to threads of despair. Wait. I reached out instinctively, my heart racing, desperation to help him coursing through me. We can find him together, I said, the words spilling out as I moved closer. Together, he repeated, but his eyes reflected confusion and fear as he rocked back on his heels. But just as the prospect of unity shimmered, the shopkeeper turned to me with a pained expression. Be careful. Helping others can sometimes lead you further into darkness. My resolve hardened against his warning. In that moment, with the shadows gathering closer, I felt the weight of choice. I could turn away, lose myself again, or stand firm, reaching out to grasp onto hope, however tenuous. And as I took a step toward the young man, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, a chilling thought slithered through me. What if the man in the green jacket wasn't just lost? What if the very people we thought of as saviors were the ones leading us into the darkest corners of uncertainty? How could I be the beacon for others when my own heart was still mired in shadows? I felt the storm press around us all, and just then, the shopkeeper's shadow fell across my path like an omen, awaiting my next move. The world outside surged with energy and urgency, and I understood that the journey ahead, the entwining paths of love, loss, and redemption had only just begun. The weight of the shopkeeper's warning lingered in the air, a reminder that the darkness we were facing might not just be external. I cast a cautious glance at the young man, whose name I still didn't know, and felt an unexpected connection begin to form, a bond of shared loss, a thread woven from pain and a desperate longing for resolution. "Sarah," I offered, breaking the suffocating silence as I reached to shake his hand. "We can help you find your brother." His hand was cold, trembling slightly as he responded, Jake. Too didn't think anyone would care to help. There was a flicker of hope in his eyes, quickly dulled by the weight of his reality. The officer shifted, adjusting the brim of his cap, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional convolutions of the moment. "We need to focus. If he was last seen around here," he gestured toward the street, "let's retrace our steps and ask a few more shopkeepers along the way." Jake's face reflected a mixture of gratitude and fear. "What if something happened to him?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice revealing a heart clinging to the edges of hope. "That we won't let that happen," I said, forcing a confidence I didn't fully feel. Together, we stepped into the brisk air, the chill biting into our skin as the weight of uncertainty hung heavily over us. I followed Jake closely, noticing the fine lines of anguish that etched across his features, illuminated briefly by the light of a nearby street lamp. It was then that I spotted her, a kind woman, sitting against the wall of a nearby coffee shop, a guitar resting on her knee. She strummed softly, her melody wrapped in warmth, a bittersweet lullaby that seemed to cut through the tensions of the night. For a fleeting moment, I glimpsed a glimmer of solace, and Jake seemed drawn to the sound. "Maybe she's seen him," I suggested, nodding in her direction. As we approached her, her eyes brightened, a softness radiating from her presence. "Excuse me," I ventured, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze, "have you seen a man in a green jacket?" The question hung in the air, weighed down by our joint desperation. The woman paused, her voice calm and soothing as she shifted her guitar to her other knee. "Many souls wander in and out of this street," she began, her eyes glimmering with understanding. "But I did see someone wearing a green jacket. He looked lost, yes, but it felt like he was searching for something greater." My breath caught in my throat at her words. Searching for something greater. The phrase triggered the quiet resonance of my own struggles, and I felt the swell of emotion bubbling up inside of me, not just concern for the man in the jacket, but for the lives woven through all of ours, tangled in the pursuit of something more. "Do you know where he went?" Jake interjected, urgency tainting his tone. I could sense his pain bubbling just beneath the surface, raw and unprocessed. The woman's brow furrowed, her fingers rested lightly on the strings of her guitar. "I saw him head down the alley behind the cafe. He seemed burdened. But sometimes you have to walk away to clear your mind, to find your truth." That simple statement resonated, echoing the idea of choices we all faced. I glanced at Jake, recognizing that we were all intertwined in this fragile web of fate. Each choice presented to us a strand in the fabric of our future. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady though my heart raced. As we turned to leave, she called out after us softly, "Be gentle with yourselves." We hurried down the alley, shadows stretching around us like dark vines intent on ensnaring our hope. I could feel Jake's anxiety growing as we approached the end of the passage, uncertainty clouding what lay before us. As we emerged into the street, we were met with a frantic commotion. People gathered near a small park, voices raised in concern. My heart sank as I caught sight of a green jacket lying crumpled on the ground, an unmistakable figure slumped beside it, the chaos around him growing louder with each echo of apprehension. No. Jake's voice broke, heavy with despair as he stumbled forward. His feet carrying him in a rush of urgency toward the fallen form that I followed instinctively, dread curling in my stomach as I wrestled with the truth I didn't want to acknowledge. When we reached the figure, my heart dropped at the sight. The man was unconscious, his expression void of life, clutching a small bundle of objects that appeared to spill from his hands onto the grass. Jake knelt beside him, calling out his brother's name, desperation lacing his voice with urgency. But as I stepped closer, my heart pounded in my chest. Beneath the haze of anxiety, something sharp and familiar tugged at my memory. A flash of the coffee shop, the frail shadows of my own past pulling at the edges of my consciousness, and then, as I leaned to get a better look, the man's face turned toward me in the darkness, and I gasped, recognition striking me like lightning. He was not just another lost soul, was someone I had met before. Someone I thought was gone. Jake, I choked out, my world tilting as I realized the connection, the intertwining of our lives was deeper than I could have ever imagined. I took a stumbling step back, the weight of my own unprocessed grief viscerally crashing over me in waves. Do you know him? Jake asked breathlessly, fear dancing in his eyes as he continued to shake his brother's shoulder desperately. Before I could respond, the crowd around us surged, and suddenly it no longer felt like just Jake's brother lying there, it felt like a tidal wave, threatening to drag us all under. The shadows I had fought against for so long were closing in again, leaving me to wonder how the echoes of my choices would reverberate in the lives around me. I struggled for air, the melody of the young woman's song ringing in my ears. Memories I thought I had safely tucked away were forcing their way back into light, just as hope and regret began their choreographed dance around us. How deep was this darkness, and what awaited us at the end of this tangled journey? The chaos around us seemed to warp and twist, each sound magnifying the urgency of the moment. Sirens wailed in the distance as onlookers clamored to make sense of the scene, but all I could focus on was Jake, his face a mosaic of anguish and determination as he begged his brother to wake up. Please, just open your eyes, Jake pleaded, his hands trembling as he cradled the younger man's head in his lap, crumpled jacket and all. The older brother in him shone through, raw and unyielding as he fought against the encroaching shadows of despair. I knelt beside them, my own heart pounding wildly, but my thoughts spun around the flickering memory of who this man was. Riley. I'd met him on a night tinged with soft laughter and quiet revelations, a connection forged in fragility. He had been a source of light, someone bringing warmth to the world around him, and in that moment, the flicker of hope I held in my chest dimmed. What had led him here? What darkness had seeped into his life, causing him to collapse like this? Sarah. Jake's voice cut through my thoughts, laced with panic. What do I do? Please, help. The intensity of his plea pulled me back to the moment, the crushing urgency amplifying the gravity of my own failure to recognize the ties that bound us. Call 911. I shouted to the gathering crowd, my voice rising above the sea of murmurs. Someone needs to call for help. Without taking my eyes off Jake and Riley, I reached into my pocket, fumbling for my phone, but it momentarily slipped from my fingers, falling onto the grass. As I retrieved it, the arrival of sirens grew closer, but the tension in my heart remained unrelieved. I couldn't let the past haunt me again. Stay with me, Riley, Jake coaxed, brushing his fingers through his brother's hair. You have to stay with me. I saw how every word resonated with the weight of their history, the unspoken bond between brothers that sometimes felt like the light and darkness of the universe dancing together. Moments ticked by painfully slow, suffocating us under hope and despair. I sent a silent prayer into the night. Whatever shadows had led us here, please don't take him. A cluster of paramedics burst onto the scene, their practiced efficiency contrasting with the emotional storm around us. They crowded around Riley, checking his vitals, their expressions serious as they worked quickly to assess what lay beneath the surface. I stepped back to give them space, but a part of me lingered close, desperate to witness the flicker of hope reigniting in Jake's eyes. As the medics worked, I sensed a weight shift within me. Despite the madness, the chaos stirred the quiet embers of determination. The woman with the guitar, still lingering nearby, glanced at me, her eyes deep with understanding, as if she too knew this battle, how something vital could be lost in an instant. Just then, a hand grabbed me. A small boy, perhaps 10 years old, stood shyly at my side, holding a half-eaten chocolate bar. My mom says this helps people because it's sweet, he said, his eyes wide with earnestness. You can give it to him when he wakes up. A rush of warmth spread through me, and I knelt beside him, touched by the unsolicited kindness in this moment of turmoil. Thank you, I whispered, taking the bar from him. That is so sweet of you. He nodded, and with a shy smile, he retreated into the crowd. The medics nodded to Jake, verbalizing an assurance that sent fresh waves of relief into the atmosphere. He was stable but unconscious, and they were transporting him to the hospital. With that small flicker of hope reignited, I turned to Jake, locking eyes with him as he absorbed the news, relief and fear intermingling in his gaze. "That I should go with him," he said, determination etched into his features. "I can't leave him alone." "Of course," I replied, my own resolve swelling as I followed his urgency. "I'll come with you." This journey wasn't just about Riley, it was about the many layers of recovery, connection, and choices still unmade. But as we turned to leave, my gaze fell upon the crumpled jacket sprawled across the grass. And within an instant, the world around me shifted again. Sticking out from the inside pocket, something glimmered, a small pendant, catching the light of the street lamp. "Wait," I said, stepping back for a moment. I picked up the jacket, my fingers trembling, and reached into the pocket. I pulled out the pendant, a familiar symbol that took my breath away. It marked a moment from my own past, a symbol I thought I had buried, thought I wouldn't see again. It was the symbol of an organization that haunted my dreams, a connection that signaled loss and bravery intertwined. It was that very organization that had led to some of the oldest scars on my heart, Jake. I called out, the gravity of the moment tightening around us. "You need to see this." But as I turned to show him, I froze, struck by an unnerving realization. The darkness wasn't over, it was just beginning, and the threads of fate were tightening their grip around us once more, revealing that the journey ahead would demand more than we were prepared to give. Could we truly step forward into the deep unknown, knowing now that our pasts were woven together in ways we never understood? The hospital waiting room was a dimly lit sanctuary of anxiety and anticipation, where the clock's tick echoed like a metronome marking the rhythm of our trepidation. Jake paced restlessly, every few moments casting a glance towards the double doors that led to the emergency room. His hands raked through his hair, a habit that spoke volumes about his inner turmoil. I sat on the edge of a plastic chair, clasping the pendant tightly in my palm, still reeling from the shock of its existence. Looking around the room, I saw families huddled together, eyes puffy from sleepless nights or the weight of worry. A toddler, lost in the noise of the world around her, tugged at her mother's shirt, innocent and unaware of the weight of the circumstances each person carried. It was a stark reminder that pain and hope often walked hand in hand, weaving in and out of our lives like an intricate tapestry. "Sarah, I can't keep doing this," Jake suddenly blurted, a voice strained with emotion. He slumped into the chair beside me, his energy waning. 2 years ago, I lost my job, and we thought it was the worst thing that could happen. And now this. It feels like everything is falling apart again. His confession echoed the fears lurking in my own heart. I drew in a shaky breath, remembering the day I lost my own stability. 17 years at the company, only for an unforeseen shift in management to sweep away my role like autumn leaves from a tree. The sudden freefall had been disorienting, a jolt that altered my identity. "I get it," I finally murmured, my voice soft but steady. "When I lost my job, I thought my entire world was collapsing. But I learned something important. Sometimes, what feels like an end is just the harbinger of something new." He raised his gaze, though his eyes were still clouded with worry. "Like what?" "More pain. More heartache, possibly," I replied, "but it could also mean growth, new friendships, or rediscovery. The chance to be better than before." Jake turned away, staring at the sterile walls as if they held the answers we sought. "I don't know if I can handle any more change right now, Sarah." In that moment, a nurse appeared, breaking through our contemplation. "Jake Adams?" she called, her expression warm yet professional. Hope surged through him as he leapt to his feet, the worry momentarily replaced by fierce determination. "Your brother is stable now, but he's still unconscious. We've moved him to a room where you can see him." I followed closely on his heels as we navigated the corridors, each sterile corner framed with soft lighting, soothing the chaos of our hearts. Jake led the way, his posture radiating both vulnerability and strength. Yet, at the core of my being, a new worry gnawed at me. Who was I to support him when my own foundations felt so unstable? We finally reached Riley's room. As we entered, I was struck by the sight of him lying on the bed, monitored by machines that beeped rhythmically around him. His face looked so peaceful, almost serene in the wake of the chaos that had led us here. "Hey, Jake breathed out, his voice cracking. He moved to his brother's side, the connection between them palpable in the air, a tether that stretched beyond the realm of words. I watched as Jake held Riley's hand, the gesture both tender and heartbreaking. "Please wake up," he pleaded softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't lose you too." Unbeknownst to him, I stood a few paces back, the pendant still clutched in my hand. The symbol of loss, resilience, and an entire world I had worked hard to forget was right there, staring me in the face. The meaning of it was suddenly haunting, invigorating the knot in my stomach, realizing I wasn't the only one with burdens to carry, and perhaps opening my own wounds could create the space for healing, not just for me, but for Jake too. I took a deep breath. "Jake," I began, stepping closer, my voice imbued with caution. "There's something I found in Riley's jacket. I think you should see it." As I unfurled my fingers, revealing the pendant, his gaze shifted from Riley to the small object that shimmered in the low light. The moment hung heavy between us, our pasts colliding with the uncertainty of the present. "What is it?" he asked, confusion clouding his features. "It has a story, a connection I didn't realize existed until now. It's linked to my past, something that I thought I had left behind." My voice trembled slightly as I prepared to delve into a tale I had fought hard to suppress, a revelation that could either mend or further fray the fragile trust that began to materialize between us. As I began to recount my story, the memory flooding back, a sudden alarm erupted from the machines surrounding Riley. A nurse rushed in, and in an instant, the serene atmosphere turned chaotic once again. I felt my heart race as Jake shot to his feet, confusion and fear etching deeper lines into his face. "Riley!" he shouted, panic erupting as he rushed toward his brother's side. The medical staff enveloped Riley, positioning themselves with frantic urgency. I stood back, helpless, realization dawning on me. Our lives were about to pivot further into the unknown, and with every revelation, every moment of vulnerability, there was an unspoken understanding that the scars of our past could shape the future in unpredictable ways. That I turned the pendant in my hand, its weight heavy with unanswered questions that now loomed larger than life. How deeply intertwined were our paths? What else lay hidden in the shadows of our histories, waiting to unravel? The chaos in Riley's room swirled around me like a powerful current, threatening to draw me under. I felt the urgency of the nurses as they unwrapped the blankets, preparing for whatever was amiss. Jake's anguished cries echoed in my ears, each syllable a dagger to my heart. "Get the crash cart!" one of the nurses shouted, shattering the fragile bubble of hope that had begun to form moments before. I stepped back, my eyes darting between the fray and Jake, whose face was now a mask of desperation, every facet of his expression pleading for a miracle. It was as if the universe had conspired to recalibrate our fears with a single jarring reality: life could change in the blink of an eye. "Where's my brother?" Jake cried, his voice raw with an intensity that shook me to my core. I felt my own heart pounding in rhythm with his, resonating with the gravity of the situation. In this moment, I was unable to think of my own turmoil, instead overwhelmed with the need to comfort him. The pendant slipped slightly in my hand, a reminder of the past that felt utterly irrelevant in the wake of such tragedy. I took a hesitant step toward Jake, ready to support him in whatever way I could, but the room felt like it had collapsed around me. Suddenly, a deep voice broke through the chaos: "We're losing him. Charge to 200. A surge of adrenaline shot through me, urging me to act. I instinctively reached for Jake's shoulder, hoping to ground him in the tumult. "Jake, look at me." His eyes flicked towards mine, filled with despair and confusion. I saw layers of grief, the loss of stability, the suffocating weight of circumstance, a looming fear of losing his brother. In that split second, I realized we were both teetering on the edge, caught in the same storm of uncertainty. As the machines beeped and the air buzzed with urgency, I blurted out, "Your brother needs you. He needs your strength." Jake, still trembling, clutched my hand as if it were a lifeline. The fear in his gaze swirled with flickers of determination as he took a deep breath, steadying himself, just enough. Right, he whispered, his resolve igniting like a flickering flame fighting against the wind, and then came the moment that would alter everything. A nurse turned to us, her voice softening amid the turmoil. He's stabilizing. We're going to do our best. Time seemed to slow, relief washed over the room. I clung to Jake, my own breath calming as we shared a fleeting moment of hope among the chaos, yet, as quickly as that moment arrived, the atmosphere shifted once more. The nurse returned to the chaotic dance around Riley, and in that breath where I thought we might steal a glance of solace, the weight of regret began to seep back in. Sarah, Jake said, his voice a whisper, show me the pendant. Pleased that I hesitated, the modest piece clinging to the remnants of my pasta past I had been desperate to escape but was now intricately tied to this moment, to Jake, and to Riley's fight. I released it into his palm, feeling somehow naked without it. This is from your brother's jacket? He asked, studying it, furrowing his brow in confusion. Yes, I breathed, there's a reason I have it. It's tied to my story, Jake. A story I thought was over. I don't need another story right now, he said, but his eyes betrayed him, hinting at the weight of his own history woven through it. Tell me. That I sensed that the truth I'd been avoiding was rising, forcing its way into the light, begging to be shared. I lost my job, and this was given to me by Riley, years ago. I thought it was just a tokena kind gesture when I was at my lowest. I never imagined in that moment, as Riley's breathing stabilized, a shift occurred not just in the pace of the machines but between us. Jake's grip tightened, and I could see his mind racing through the memories, connections dawning on him. What do you mean, it was given to you? He demanded, urgency laced in his tone that I froze for just a heartbeat, the unspoken threads tying our lives together suddenly demanding to be unraveled. Riley and he saved me once. When I lost everything, he helped me find my way back. This pendant. I hesitated, thinking of where my truth would lead us. It symbolizes more than just a job loss. It connects to the life I'm trying to forget, and now it's resurfacing, intertwining with your family. The noise dimmed in the room as Jake's expression morphed through disbelief and recognition, his brow furrowing deeper. He never told me. Now things are changing, Jake, I pleaded, desperation coloring my words. But you have to understand, I'm not the person I was then. And Riley, he is fighting for a chance to wake up to a world that is so much more complicated now. Before Jake could respond, the alarms erupted once again, drawing all attention back to the nurses around Riley. I gasped, feeling the thrum of impending doom surge through us. As Jake turned toward his brother, I sensed the wall of fear growing thicker between us, a palpable barrier that threatened to seal our fates apart. Please, Jake cried out again, but all that surrounded us faded into a blur. Just then, a nurse suddenly shouted, he's coding. Prepare for CPR. Jake reeled back, and I stood frozen, filled with uncertainty, bound by the truth waiting to be unleashed. Would my revelation draw us closer, or would it tear apart what little thread of connection we had managed to weave in this tempestuous moment? As I stared at the chaos enveloping Riley, a truth pulsed in my chest, dark and unwieldy, begging to be set free. We were standing on the precipice of revelations, with hope and despair intertwined, neither of us knowing what lay ahead as the next moments unfolded. What would this mean for us if Riley fought through and woke up? What if he didn't? But the moment of reckoning had arrived, and there was no turning back. The world around me felt like shifting sand, each moment threatening to swallow us whole. I watched Jake's face, a mix of terror and boiling determination, as the nurses struggled to revive Riley. It was a frantic dance, and I was but an observer tethered to this devastating reality. Stay with him, Riley. Jake's voice cracked like raw glass, each syllable carved from desperation. My heart echoed his anguish, a shared resonance of fear. I wanted to reach out, to assure him, to promise that everything would be okay. Yet, a part of me questioned if we were being foolishly optimistic. I clenched the pendant like a talisman against the unknown. The memories of my past, both painful and strangely comforting, washed over me. This simple piece of jewelry had once been a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest hours, kindness could emerge from unexpected places. I had thought I'd escaped its shadow, but as I watched Riley's frail body fight for each breath, I felt the weight of my own choices bearing down upon me. Do you remember the last time you were here? Jake suddenly asked, drawing me from my reverie. His eyes locked onto mine, and I could see a flicker of something raw vulnerability, a bridge across our shared predicament. I remember. I swallowed hard, pulling up the memory. It was during that storm last year. You brought him in. Jake nodded, his brow tightening. He insisted on helping that family stranded lose everything. He didn't care that he could have been hurt. His voice quivered, recollections spiraling free, laced with love and regret. He always throws himself into situations. But now, it's hard to see him like this. Jake, he's a fighter. He's always been, I murmured, my words almost a plea. That's why it's so important to stay strong. He needs you. The words felt feeble yet significant, an ember in the shadowy pit of despair. As we shared that charged moment, the room seemed to hush, the frantic chaos slowing for just a heartbeat. Then the room erupted again. The crash cart was wheeled in, a stark contrast of sterile metal against the flowing emotions surrounding us. I stepped back, sensing the medical staff's need for space, but Jake wouldn't let go of my hand, anchoring both of us in this tumultuous present. Please, just stay with me, he said, brimming with a desperate resolve. My throat tightened as the reality of my own past collided with Jake's pain. How could I be the anchor for him when I felt so adrift? How could I justify the burden of my past choices when faced with the impending loss of his brother? Just then, a nurse glanced over, her expression softening as she caught our gaze. We're going to do everything we can, she said, her voice low yet resonant. The reassurance felt genuine, even as urgency thrummed in the air. Still, I sensed the shadows lurking, the unspoken words that hung heavily between Jake and me. Riley always admired you, Jake said suddenly, drawing my attention back to him. He told me you were a force, someone who changed everything. My breath caught. What do you mean? He said you were like light, a spark when everything felt dark, he confessed, a flicker of belief glinting in his eyes. I never really understood how much you impacted his life, Sarah. But after this, now I see it. Tears stung my eyes. For years, I had tried to erase what my presence had wrought. Yet now, in this critical moment, I felt revealed, exposed as the very person Riley had believed I could be. Yet the chaotic beeping resumed, pulling our attention back to Riley, who seemed to be slipping further away from us. The nurses worked with precision, mixed with a frantic energy that mirrored Jake's wide-eyed horror. Tell him to fight. Tell him to come back. Jake screamed, desperation bursting through. Riley. Come back to us. My heart broke, witnessing the raw pleading that spilled from him. I felt compelled to lean closer, my voice barely a whisper. Riley, you can do this. You have so many people who need you. Not just Jake, but everyone. We're all rooting for you. Moments turned into an eternity. The beeping intensified. Before suddenly the sound steadied. The nurse's grip on the paddles fell slightly slack, a cautious breath escaping her lips. His heart is stabilizing. We're regaining rhythm. Her eyes caught Jake's, a sliver of hope shimmering between them. Jake exhaled deeply, the relief pouring over him in waves. His grip on my hand didn't falter, and I sensed a new connection weaving between us, one grounded in shared fight and quiet understanding. But then, in that brief moment of relief, a familiar face crossed the room, one that sent my heart plummeting. It was Liz, the HR representative from my old job. I froze, caught off guard, mortified that she had shown up here of all places. Would she have come to say words of comfort? Or to remind me of what I'd lost? All of the emotions I thought were under control surged forward once again. My aching wounds, buried beneath the chaos of the moment, suddenly felt raw. Memories of my dismissal and disillusionment floated back, threatening to consume me. Jake's eyes caught mine, confusion etched across his face. Are you okay? I forced a nod, attempting to quell the storm swirling within. All I could think about was the connection that bound Jake and me through this troubled time, and the uncharted waters we were navigating. In my heart, though, I feared what revelations could surface if I allowed Liz to approach. As I stood there, I realized the ground beneath us was far less stable than I'd hoped. With Riley's life hanging in the balance, our stories weaving into something greater, I knew something pivotal was about to unfold. The weight of the truth lingered, a storm ready to break, and I was standing directly in its path. The air around us crackled with confusion and unsaid words, heavier now that Liz stood within our fragile circle of hope. Her gaze flitted from me to Jake, her brow furrowing slightly, but she remained poised, reflecting the professionalism that had always characterized her. Fear wrestled with recognition in my chest. I had long since believed I could avoid my past, but standing here, in this hospital room filled with urgency and fear, I felt ensnared by my own reckoning. "Sarah," she said, her voice calm but marked by a hint of uncertainty. "I heard about Riley. I'm so sorry." The concern in her voice might have softened the moment if not for the years of pain and loss that shaped my memories of her. It felt surreal that she would show up, as if the universe was orchestrating a meeting at the precipice of despair. In that instant, I saw behind her professionally composed facade, I recognized the vulnerability in her eyes as she turned away briefly, catching her breath. This wasn't about me. It was about Riley, and yet, it felt as if my past choices were crashing in like waves, relentless and overwhelming. "Thank you," I managed, the words feeling like shards in my throat. My pulse throbbed as I met Jake's gaze, seeking refuge in the clarity of his expression. He was still so tethered to Riley and the reality of our situation, it made me question how I could balance my internal wreckage with his needs. Before I had a chance to say anything more, the tension rose as a doctor entered the room, wearing a metal countenance. He approached us, eyes scanning the monitors that hummed and beeped in rhythmic disarray. "We made some progress. His heart rate is stabilizing, but we need to keep monitoring closely." Jake wiped a tear from his cheek, listening intently. I saw the determination flicker back in his eyes, a light breaking through the shadow that had gripped him. "Can we see him?" His voice was steady now, manifesting the hope that still burned brightly in the depths of despair. The doctor nodded, understanding palpable in the shared air. "Not yet. He'll need some time to respond to the treatment. But he'll keep you updated." As he exited, I felt the collective breath of the room release in unison with Jake's deep exhale. The momentary reprieve was abruptly shattered as I caught a glimpse of Liz still lingering, watching me closely. It felt as if she were waiting for permission to approach. In many ways, this was the emotional crossroads I had feared. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised by the edge in my voice. It felt accusatory, a desperate attempt to guard against the vulnerability I felt seeping into my bones. "That I came to check in," she replied, her voice holding an almost tender concern. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. I know it's been a tough time for you." "Too didn't realize it would involve your past as well." Tension hung heavy in the air, and I could see Jake's confusion brewing beneath the surface like a tempest waiting to unleash. I didn't want to explain. I couldn't bear to unravel the threads of my life in front of him while his brother lay fighting for his own. Instead, I turned my back to her and stepped closer to Jake, who rested against the wall, lost in thought. "He'll be okay." "He has to be," I whispered, though doubts crept through the cracks in my confidence. Jake nodded, his eyes flaring with renewed resolution. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, the atmosphere shifted. A shrill alarm broke the moment, yanking the safety net from beneath us. Nurses rushed back into the room, their movements sharp and practiced. "We need to stabilize him," one shouted, her voice carrying authority amidst chaos. Jake clutched my hand tighter. "What's happening?" The tremor in his voice carved through me, crackling with fear. I watched in horror as they surrounded Riley's bed, their faces grim yet focused. I felt utterly helpless, as if I were watching a scene from a nightmare that refused to release me. The world outside the sterile walls seemed to fade into an unfathomable darkness. Then, in the midst of this commotion came a soft, hesitant touch on my arm. "Sarah," Liz said, her warmth contrasting the chill that gripped my heart. "Let me help." Inwardly, I waged a war. The practical part of me knew she was genuine, and perhaps this was her act of compassion attempting to mend the rifts of the past. But there was so much unresolved between us, a tangled web of memories and emotions that had yet to find their resolution. Why now? I breathed out, eyes darting to Riley's still form, then back to Liz, searching for answers. Why do you feel the need to stitch this wound? But before she could respond, the alarms cut through again, echoing like a dire warning across the sterile sky of our reality. Code Blue. Room 310. It resonated through the hallway, a haunting call that sent shivers down my spine. Jake's grip faltered for a moment, and my breath caught in my throat. I felt swept away in the uncertainty of what was about to unfold, the fabric of our hopes unraveling before my eyes. What would we be left with once the dust settled and the chaos faded? In this hospital, where hope clashed against despair, I could only cling to Jake, to memories of Riley, and to the unexpected closeness that threatened to expose me in ways I had never anticipated. The future loomed over us, unclear and tumultuous, as the shadows of our past began to merge, threatening to disclose truths that lay buried deep within us both. And just then, I was struck by an unsettling realization: everything was about to change, whether we were ready or not. The waiting room felt more suffocating than before, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words and fears that clung to us like a second skin. Each minute stretched into infinity as we awaited news on Riley. My mind swirled with the chaos of the past and present colliding in an avalanche of conflict and clarity. Yet the frantic beeping from the machines felt like a throbbing pulse in my ears, a reminder of the fragility of life, of the thin line we all danced upon, the shadows looming at the edges of every hope and dream. I kept my grip tight around Jake's hand, a lifeline meant to tether us together against this tempest that and the silence that followed. A thought pierced through the haze: why was I so afraid to embrace my past? The pendant nestled in my pocket felt heavy, and it was a strange irony that in seeking to let go, I had inadvertently allowed the echoes of my past to weave into Jake's present, to intertwine our lives in a manner I hadn't anticipated. Perhaps we weren't so different after all. What if Jake's voice broke through my thoughts, raw and hoarse, laden with the weight of possibility? What if Riley doesn't wake up? His eyes glistened in the fluorescent light, and I felt the depth of his despair echo in the depths of my own heart. What if this is all we have left? No. I shook my head, willing the words to resonate within both of us. He has to come back. He's fought too hard, too long. I realized in that moment that my belief in Riley's strength mirrored my need to believe in my own. Because if Riley could battle through this moment of darkness, perhaps I could too, and not just emerge, but thrive. That a soft knock interrupted our reverie, and a nurse stepped in, her expression a mask of professionalism. Family of Riley Adams. She scanned the waiting room, her voice steady, and I took a deep breath, casting a worried glance at Jake. Is he okay? Jake's voice trembled. What's happening? The nurse's eyes softened, an underlying compassion overshadowing the sterile demeanor she wore. He's stable now, but he did code. We've got him on a ventilator to support his breathing for the moment. Jake slumped against the wall, the tension in his shoulders easing only slightly. Can I see him? Of course. He's asleep, but you may talk to him. We find patients can often hear their loved ones, even in their unconscious state. Those words, steeped in hope, hung in the air, a fragile thread that seemed to bind us all. That I want to go, Jake said, determination ignited in the depths of his eyes. I could see the lingering fear and the resolve fighting for dominance within him. He turned to me, a fleeting hesitation crossing his features, revealing the shared bond that had unexpectedly blossomed between us. Will you come with me? He'll always be here, I assured him, and as we stepped into the sterile hallway, my heart pounded wildly with every step towards uncertainty. As we entered Riley's room, the stark white walls caught the muted glow of afternoon light filtering through the window. Riley lay entwined in sheets, surrounded by beeping machines that painted a stark picture of vulnerability. Tubes snaked around his body, the rise and fall of his chest a fragile reminder of his continued fight. Riley, Jake whispered, breaking the heavy silence like glass shattering on the floor. It's Jake. I'm here. For a moment, there was stillness, and I felt the silence settling in like an uneasy tide, threatening to drown the hope we had clung to for so long. But then a slight flutter in Riley's eyelid sent a shockwave through us. Jake leaned closer, eyes wide and shining with unspent tears. "Come on, bro. Just wake up for me." The air crackled with energy, reverberating with something that felt transcendent, almost miraculous. And in that moment, I felt my own past unfurling, my heart aching with an understanding I had long battled against, a realization that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the strength to face the chaos and embrace the pain. I stepped forward instinctively, a whisper escaping me before I could stop it. "Riley, it's Sarah. You helped me once, now it's time to come back to us." My voice felt both foreign and familiar, brimming with the shared history of what had been a fleeting friendship, now deepened by struggle and the intimacy of loss. Jake turned to me, surprise illuminating his expression, but just as quickly, he nodded, a flicker of belief igniting in his eyes. "Yes, Riley. You're loved. You don't have to fight alone." And in that miraculous moment, the machines took a sharp breath, the beeping transforming into a steady rhythm. The presence of life surged through the room, magnifying our fragile hope. It was more than survival, it was a declaration that we would fight together. "That I believe in you," I whispered, feeling the warmth of connection envelop us, collapsing the distance that once separated our histories. I had faced my fears and learned that, yes, it was okay to depend on one another amidst the chaos, but first, I had to forgive myself. The next few moments stretched infinitely as we clung to that thread of belief, our act of sharing light in the darkness. Riley's face seemed less ghostly, a hint of color returning to his cheeks, a silent plea of hope resounding between us. Suddenly, something shifted, Riley's eyelids fluttered again, and slowly, his gaze flickered open, revealing a muffled confusion. "Jake." His voice croaked, a whisper weighed down with fatigue but laced with recognition. "Yes, I'm here," Jake exclaimed, the joy bursting through his fear as he clutched Riley's hand tighter, a connection stronger than any darkness that lurked nearby. In that breathtaking moment, I watched as brothers reunited, not just with one another but with the very threads of existence that had tried to tear them apart. I backed away, allowing them the moment, a moment fraught with emotion, replete with all that they could finally say and all that they had experienced together. Finally, I felt the pendant shift in my pocket as tears spilled freely down my cheeks. The weight of the past began to lift, revealing the truth forged in the flames of despair. Life was not just about loss or grief, but the intertwining connections we made along the way, the fragments we gathered and the lights we ignited in one another. As I stepped outside, the sunlight enveloped me like a warm embrace, palpable against my skin, a reminder that I was also a part of this world, a world that still carried the potential for renewal. Turning back towards the room, I saw Jake resting his forehead against Riley's, tears mingling together as laughter broke free, an ode to the battles fought and the love that had emerged from the rubble. As the weight of their connection settled into my heart, I felt the last of my fears dissipate. Breathing in the promise of daylight, I whispered a prayer for all those entwined in this journey, knowing that forgiveness and healing could bloom in unexpected places. And in that final moment, I accepted the truth about myself: our pasts are not meant to define us, but to enrich the tapestry of love we weave in our shared humanity. "Life's precious, and it carries us forward," I murmured softly, my heart at last bursting with the fervor of newfound understanding. As I navigated the world outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something truly beautiful awaited. All the pieces would come together, and all would be well in a way I had never imagined before. And with that, I turned away from the shadows of what belonged to yesterday. "Who knows what hidden treasures lie ahead," I whispered to the wind, allowing hope to carry me forward one heartbeat at a time.